He has been in the dark and bright days of the Kenyan nation. He has been inside the government. He has also been inside the opposition. Raila Amolo Odinga. He has been widely described as the enigma in Kenyan politics. To some, he cuts the image of a hardened war general that has fought and won many political battles. Yet others consider him the man many love to hate. Raila has been viewed as a bold, double-faced politician, ready to take risks. His critics are as eloquent in their dislike as his supporters are in their praise. The late Kijana Wamalwa couldn't describe him better when he said, "Those who love him with passion, and those who hate him with passion." And such is the description of Raila Odinga. But who is this man? Raila attempted to run for presidency in 1997 and lost. He attempted again in 2007 and also lost. In 2013, he is at it again. Could he be third time lucky? Though recent opinion polls have described him as the man to beat in 2013, are his chances obvious? Raila was born on January 7, 1945 in Maseno, Nyanza province. He is the second-born son of Mary Juma and late Jaramogi Oginga Odinga. He received his early education at Komulo School in Kisumu before joining Maranda High School in Bondo. Later, he completed his secondary education at the Herder Institute in what was then the German Democratic Republic. In 1965, after learning how to speak and write German, he joined the Otto von Guericke University to study mechanical engineering and graduated with a Master of Science degree. Later in the year 1970, Raila returned to Kenya and joined the University of Nairobi as a lecturer, where he taught mechanical engineering up to 1974. The same year, the government established the Kenya Bureau of Standards through an Act of Parliament. Raila had an interest in standards specifications field, and with his growing interest, this became his natural home when he landed himself a job as Deputy Director of the Bureau, hence quitting his teaching job at the university. As he joined his tenure as the second in command at the Bureau, he started taking passive participation in the growing movement for political reform in Kenya. Came the year 1982, and a section of the Kenya Air Force took part in an unsuccessful coup attempt. Later, arrests of many civilians took place, and Raila was also locked in because of his radicalism record. Raila was detained for up to 6 years from 1982 to 1988, after which he was released and again redetained twice within a 2-year period. He received his freedom back in 1991.
Raila was detained in what will go down in history as the dark ages of political detainments, detention without trial, and that the government brooked no dissent, and anybody who as much as lifted a finger was put in. Now, those days, Raila was not known for any open agitation against the KANU regime. In fact, the person who was known to speak against the regime was his father, the late Jaramogi Oginga Odinga. And so it usually came as a surprise to many people that Raila would be from time to time arrested and detained without trial. So in summary, one would say part of it looked like It was aimed at the father, but it is possible that he could have been doing some things behind the scenes. And in subsequent years, it was for obvious political agitation for change.
With political temperatures in the country reaching fever pitch, there was growing pressure for the expansion of the democratic space in the country. The same year that saw Raila out of detention also became a year that spelled doom in his political career, as word went round that there was a plan to either assassinate him or detain him yet again. Raila had no choice but to flee the country. Destination: Norway, where he stayed briefly in exile and received political asylum. Finally, the Kenya government bowed to pressure, and in December 1991, the multi-party democracy was restored and Raila returned home to join the rest of the second liberation leaders to continue with their pursuit.
And we get to a point where there comes open agitation. That agitation emanates from the religious community and from a few bold dissenting voices. Among them, and foremost, of course, is the voice of Jaramogi Oginga Odinga. It was difficult to believe when they said, for example, that they would hold a multi-party democracy rally at Kamkunji. It was difficult to believe that they would actually do it. And when they dared go to Kamkunji on the 7th of July 1991, they were actually shot at by the Kenya police with live bullets. That notwithstanding, and some 2 people were killed, they went on with the agitation, and the world knew that the moment of change had come. And that is how the change that brought about multi-party democracy came about.
Later, the Forum for Restoration of Democracy Ford was founded, and Raila's father, the late Jaramogi Oginga Odinga, was the leader. And came the general elections of 1992 that saw Raila elected as Member of Parliament for Langata, a seat that was initially occupied by Dr. Liki. This was the first multi-party elections in Kenya for nearly a quarter of a century. Jaramogi was elected Member of Parliament for Bondo and became leader of the official opposition. Unfortunately, he was taken ill and succumbed in 1994. Later, an infighting within Ford made Raila to quit and form the National Development Party of Kenya (NDP). Raila contested for the presidential elections of 1997 on an NDP ticket and finished 3rd out of the 15 contestants. The authoritarian rule of KANU party at the time was firmly in control of the state and its machinery, and Raila believed the only way to try and disrupt the status quo was to join forces with KANU and fight from within.
If you are going to dislodge KANU from power, you needed to penetrate it and try to see whether you could destabilize it from inside. And so Raila, having now formed the NDP, first goes for the elections in 1997. So he goes back to the policy and practice that his father had begun, which is cooperating with KANU, and that cooperation eventually matures, it blossoms into a merger. And in February 2002, we are hearing of such a thing as New KANU, with Raila Odinga as Secretary General.
As the 2002 elections drew closer, President Moi was constitutionally bound to retire from the presidency. But as he was planning to retire, he was also planning to succeed himself by putting in place what was widely described by observers as a proxy puppet regime. Moi did not consider a competitive nomination process to pick his successor and decided to dictate the terms by endorsing Uhuru Kenyatta against the will of many other interested candidates who had eyed the job. To Raila's shock, Uhuru Kenyatta, who appeared politically inexperienced at the time, was picked in his favor.
Raila's motivation at that particular point was in the hope that when they did the cooperation and then the merger with the NDP and KANU, he was hoping that the then President Daniel Arap Moi would endorse him as the KANU presidential candidate, and that would be an automatic route to the presidency. Of course, that did not happen. Daniel Arap Moi opted for Uhuru Kenyatta as the KANU presidential candidate and his preferred successor, and that's what led to the walkout from KANU in 2002, and that eventually led to Raila declaring Kibaki Tosha and Kibaki becoming the president of this country.
Things happen very rapidly within the space of just about 8 months, that when we get to October 2002, KANU is ready to give birth. And it gives birth, what people say in a very chameleonic manner, that the product, LDP, the Liberal Democratic Party, led by, among others, Raila Odinga, goes out with a number of hitherto KANU stalwarts. And that is the beginning of the atrophy of KANU.
Raila and other like-minded leaders disagreed on Moi's undemocratic process and quickly moved out to team up with the opposition members to form the National Rainbow Coalition, NARC. Raila led the NARC faction in vigorous countrywide campaigns and even buried his own presidential dream and endorsed Mwai Kibaki as the NARC presidential candidate. Later memorandum of understanding was signed by all parties that were members that constituted to form what was then the National Rainbow Coalition, NARC. NARC overwhelmingly won the 2002 elections to beat President Moi's preferred successor Uhuru Kenyatta, therefore ending a 4-decade authoritative rule by KANU. When the new NARC government took over, Kibaki was president and Kijana Wamalwa vice president. Raila was appointed Minister for Roads.
Raila Amolo Odinga, naapa kwamba nitakuwa mwaminifu kwa Jamhuri ya Kenya. Mwenyezi Mungu nisaidie.
NARC enjoyed a new political dispensation under Kibaki's charge as the coalition government tried to keep up with promises that had been given to Kenyans during the heated campaign period. Key among them was the announcement by President Mwai Kibaki that the government had undertaken to provide free primary education. As days and months passed by, a familiar turn of events that usually characterize a coalition government was felt. The NARC government started experiencing hiccups within the first year of its dispensation when allegations that President Kibaki had reneged on the Memorandum of Understanding that had been signed by the coalition parties prior to the 2002 elections.
Having gone past the post, President Kibaki behaved in what one may want to call a Machiavellian manner, because Niccolo Machiavelli, the author of The Prince, tells you that when the new prince has been enthroned, he must not only neglect, but if possible destroy those who have made him. Because if you do not do that and you leave them to hang around, they will keep on troubling you because they think that you owe them something. So it is better to marginalize them, push them completely to the fringes, and have about you new people who have not in any significant way contributed to your enthronement, because the new people will feel that they are grateful to you, while the ones who put you there think that you should be grateful to them. And that was, I think, why the famous MOU was thrown to the dogs.
Raila was undeterred and encouraged other coalition partners to work together towards the realization of a new constitution. The journey to the drafting of Kenya's new constitution kicked off as consultations with stakeholders took place throughout the nation. The National Constitutional Review Commission prepared a complete draft of the new constitution. However, there were allegations that some powerful forces within government who were fashioned against the redistribution of power away from the powerful executive arm came up with their own draft. And what followed was for the citizens to decide on whether or not they would approve the draft. Came 2005 and the draft was put to a nationwide referendum. With the government supporting the draft, the banana fruit symbol was used, and for the Raila-led team who were against the draft, the orange fruit symbol was used. After a vicious campaign against the proposed draft, the Raila team won the referendum after Wananchi voted against it.
Kiraitu Murungi, for all his prior democratic credentials, led the non-progressive forces out of the Bomas of Kenya process when it was very clear that the draft that Kenyans wanted was getting the final assent and nod of the Bomas of Kenya delegates. Then my good friend Mzee Simeon Nyachai goes to Kilifi. He drafts something else which is brought to parliament, and it's a bad thing. Members of parliament are through one mechanism or the other cost to make that bad draft to go through, and it was bad because it was going to permanently place political and economic power in this country in the hands of one tribal community. It was on the basis of that it was mobilized very, very significantly, even by people like Mzee Moi, to vote against that constitution in November 2005.
As a blessing in disguise, the Raila team that had used the orange symbol consequently gave birth to the political party dubbed the Orange Democratic Movement, ODM. After a spirited fight against the draft constitution, President Kibaki could no longer keep Raila and his army in government. What followed were matching orders. Kibaki sacked all of them and made new appointments. As the 5 years of the NUC coalition government drew closer, came 2007 and Raila was picked as the ODM flag bearer after nominations that saw him and Mudavadi contest. Though viewed as a mere formality, Raila beat Musalia by over 3/4 of the total votes cast. Mudavadi took the number 2 slot and remained Raila's trusted number 2 up to the year 2012. Raila faced off with Mwai Kibaki in the 2002 elections with their coalition parties ODM and PNU respectively. After elections were conducted, allegations of election malpractice were reported, and the international election observers confirmed the elections were not free and fair. After the electoral body declared Kibaki the winner, violence erupted and Kenya witnessed inter-ethnic wars that paralyzed the social and economic pillars. Thousands of innocent Kenyans were killed and many more displaced as property worth millions of shillings got destroyed. The chaos started when the electoral body announced Mwai Kibaki as victor, Despite the preliminary results that had given Raila the lead, Raila claimed he had been robbed of his victory, and what followed next was a countrywide bloodbath. Mwai Kibaki was later on sworn in late in the evening at Statehouse, Nairobi.
Nitaihifadhi, nitailinda na kuitetea katiba ya Kenya kwa mujibu wa sheria iliyowekwa. Ewe Mwenyezi Mungu nisaidie.
As violence continued in the country, it was up to the international community to negotiate a peace deal. Former UN Secretary-General Kofi Annan, with his team of eminent persons under the umbrella of the African Union AU, was sent to Kenya to forge a peace deal that eventually ended the nationwide bloodbath after Kibaki and Raila agreed on a power-sharing arrangement that ultimately gave birth to the Grand Coalition Government. A national accord was then signed by both Raila and Kibaki, and hence made Kibaki retain his position as president while Raila became Prime Minister. This marked the beginning of the coalition government, a bloated cabinet that stretched the country's wage bill and highly increased the cost of living. And as is the norm with many coalition governments, hiccups started being felt. Protocol rows were immediately felt between the Prime Minister, Raila Odinga, and the Vice President, Kalonzo Musyoka, as the members of the public were treated to a show of the high and mighty. Later, there was the remuneration package that Raila refused to sign, saying he was not ready to accept a remuneration that was below Kalonzo's, yet he was higher than Kalonzo in the pecking order.
Somebody would say that the Prime Minister should be remunerated as a Vice President. That basically revises the pecking order which is in the accord. The pecking order in the accord is that there are two equal partners. I'm willing to be remunerated somewhere between the President and the Vice President, but not as an equal of the Vice President.
As the coalition government continued to exist, more underlying issues came into the public eye.
Kila mahali district mpya. Hii district mpya. Na sheria inasema bunge ni inaweza kuleta district. Sasa sisi tuko ndani ya serikali. Waziri mkuu hana habari. Ati rais kesa atakwenda kupeana district pale. Anapeana tu peke yake. Je, hiyo ni haki? Hiyo ni haki? Hiyo ni heshima kweli? Kuna heshima kweli?
As Raila claimed ill treatment from his coalition partner Mwai Kibaki, saying he had been treated as a junior partner in the coalition, going against the national accord that had been duly signed by the duo and provided for equality between the two principals.
Waziri mkuu anakuja kwa sheria kubwa kama na hii ya serikali, PC hakuna. Unaambia PC ameenda Nairobi. Kama Kibaki alikuwa anakuja hapa, PC angeweza kosa kuja kwa hapa. Angekosa. Na angewekewa sana namna hii bila hata choo. Angewekewa.
Tutakujengea choo popote unapoenda. Pia ukitaka kukaa ndani ya gari yako.
Lack of consultations translated into conflict between the two principals and threatened the working of the coalition.
Alafu na nusu kapeti namna hii. Nusu mkeka. Alafu wanasema ati wao wanakuheshimu. Mimi hata nasema itowe hii kapeti itoke hapa.
Under Raila's watch, a multi-million shilling maize corruption scandal was reported in the Ministry of Agriculture that implicated the minister in charge at the time, William Ruto. Ruto belonged to the Raila's arm of the coalition government. Raila came under intense pressure to sack William Ruto as minister. Instead, he transferred him to the Ministry of Higher Education. Why?
When William Ruto was in the good books of Raila Odinga, it was convenient for him to be protected regardless of whether he had done it or he had not done it. He was in the good books. It was politically expedient that he should be protected. However, other things did emerge. The Mau water tower saga, the competition for the position of deputy party leader and power struggles within the ODM party, the need to position himself for future things on the part of Ruto himself. All these are necessitating that he must start to jostle for space. And he jostled for that in a manner that quite often rubbed Raila the wrong way. And then, of course, there came questions of the ICC and so on, and Ruto went completely off the handle.
As if that was not enough, another graft allegation came to the public light when Professor Sam Ongeri was implicated in a 4.2 billion shilling scam under the Kenya Education Sector Support Program money that had been set aside to fund free primary education.
I am hereby suspending with immediate effect the following ministers for a period of 3 months. 1. Honorable William Ruto, Minister for Agriculture. 2. Honorable Samuel Ongeri, Minister for Education.
I have not received any communication from the appointing authority as Minister for Agriculture, and therefore I will continue to discharge the responsibilities of the Minister for Agriculture until that authority tells me I should do otherwise.
I have not had any message from the appointing authority, and I'm quite clear in my mind who is the appointing authority.
Was Raila a ceremonial prime minister who did not have powers to hire and fire?
Neither Raila nor Kibaki, according to the law, as it has stood over the past 5 years, could appoint or dismiss in certain portfolios without consulting the other. And that has made it very difficult for them to make changes that their hearts and minds would have desired on either side of the divide.
With graft allegations being reported in ministries under his watch, can Raila fight corruption if elected president?
You know, the whole thing about corruption is that it provides very fertile ground for name-calling, whistling in the dark, and I think one can also say witch hunting. Because if there are scandals, like there's a Kazi kwa Vijana scandal, and somebody has got the facts, why can't we take these people to court? Why can't the facts be placed on the table? That's the question we keep asking. So I think that when it comes to questions of corruption, we need to stop using them as political whips against our opponents and confront corruption for what it is, look it in the eye, call it by its correct name, which is stealing, and say that these fellows are thieves and deal with them accordingly.
Raila Odinga has been a Member of Parliament for Langata constituency for the last 4 terms and has also served as Minister in various ministries. Until he declared his interest in the presidential race, he was Kenya's Prime Minister. But despite his very remarkable political career and his big influence in the government and political circles, Raila's constituency harbours Kibera slum, the largest slum in Nairobi and the largest urban slum in Africa. With Raila aiming at the presidential seat, many observers argue that he wasn't instrumental to implement the slum upgrading program to its fullest. So how can he be trusted to drive the country's vision?
That land has been under the administration of officers working for the office of the president, and more so the people we call the chiefs. Now those chiefs give permits to people like you and I who don't live in Kibera. They allow us to put up temporary structures Depending on our wherewithal, you can put up 10, I can put up 50 because I'm slightly more affluent. The next person can put up 100, some other fellow will put up 1,000. And those shacks in Kibera belong to some very rich people who live in Karen, who live in Muthaiga, in Nyari, who live in Lavington, and wherever. You cannot go there and remove those things. You'd be in a lot of trouble because they belong to who is who in this country. It's not a simple question of you walk in with the caterpillar breakdown and you start bringing down the slums and constructing things. Mzee Moi, when he was around, did attempt to do some upgrading. He started right here off Mbagathi roads. Very quickly, who moved in to own those houses? The rich people in this society. We need to address this as very serious issues and stop playing politics with them.
Raila fell out with former Agriculture Minister and Eldoret North Member of Parliament William Ruto following his dismissal from government and consequently the ICC cases, with the Rift Valley voting bloc being key in the March 4th elections. What options does Raila have to consolidate these votes?
It's very unlikely that even as we go, when elections are done, that Raila will get a significant number of votes in Rift Valley as a result of the acrimony that he fell out with Ruto, and as a result also of the fact that the grassroots, the ground, feels that Ruto is in problems with at the Hague, not because of what he did for Raila. And it's the same thing that happens also for Uhuru. You could argue the same way for Uhuru, but it's even more significant for William Ruto. In the case of William, there's a lot of bitterness in Rift Valley towards what happened with the fact that Ruto is facing charges because of having fought to get Raila to be recognized as the winner of the presidential elections in 2007, if that was the case.
And William Ruto, it's equally a significant loss in the sense that William Ruto was able to galvanize the Rift Valley vote to come out and vote almost to a man for Raila Odinga in 2007. And right now, the perception is he has already walked out with that block of vote and taken it to Uhuru Kenyatta. Yes, so in terms of perception and also in reality, he has lost in some significant areas.
Another pillar of what was once the Pentagon is Najib Balala. Balala was sacked out of government as tourism minister, and until 2013 January, he was a member of parliament for Mvita constituency. Balala was sacked after publicly declaring his dissatisfaction with the ODM presidential nomination method. So, having lost Balala, who was a force to reckon with in the coast province politics, how does Raila intend to cover up for the coastal vote?
That if you go to coast region, now Najib Balala has been replaced by Ali Hassan Joho.
For Balala, the fallout was not as bitter as with the Ruto. And then again, also Balala, by the time he was falling out, actually he had even started winning as a major player in Mombasa, in Coast Province. Previously, in much earlier, like a few years earlier, Balala was a major player. But over time, that has waned down as we've seen other forces come up, other players come up, and more significant people like Ali Hassan Joho, who have people like Ramadan Kajembe, and a number of others. They've come in and they've kind of supplanted him and became much bigger players. So much as his fallout with Raila may have hurt Raila's support in Coast Province, it's that one at least is compensated by the fact that there are these other players who came in.
I suspect that Najib Balala gained more from being with Raila than Raila gained at the cost from being with Najib Balala. It should not surprise me to see that Najib Balala does not, in fact, get elected for the position that he is looking for in the devolved government in this election.
Just like Balala, Musalia Mudavadi left the ODM party in similar fashion. Mudavadi has been a key pillar in the Western Kenya voting bloc. Which political moves can Raila consider to get a fair share of the crucial Western Kenya vote?
After Musalia's leaving, I think Raila suffered significantly, but he is trying to use people like Moses Wetangula, people like Cyrus Jirongo, to try and use them as a vote catching machine, to try and harness those votes of Western Province. But whether or not this will work, it depends again on Mudavadi's, if Mudavadi's presidential campaign gains serious traction, it is unlikely, most likely Mudavadi is the one who is likely to get more votes in that area. Although again, there are also those other regional dynamics for the various Western Province communities may have different preferences. Not necessarily, it's not an homogeneous community that you can say they'll go on with one, or they'll vote only maybe for Mudavadi or for, the fact that he has people like Wetangula from Bukusuland, it may help him to get some votes in that area. But places like Kakamega, Vihiga, which are different, you most likely Mudavadi may carry those ones.
Musalia Mudavadi is known for making very wrong political decisions, and he has made one once again. The Luhya people do not follow their leaders. The Luhya people follow causes. It's something that is deeply ingrained in the value system of that community. That's why it's been very difficult for them at any one time to come together and vote for one individual. That is regardless that that individual is himself or herself from that community. In 2007, he got back because they believed in the values which he represented. Now he moves out of that space and imagines that they are going to move with him. They will not. You can put that in your diary today, and we can talk about this again in the next 4 weeks' time. They will not.
It's in Western Kenya where you can almost say there's some clear loss for Raila Odinga while he's making his stab at the presidency, because Musalia Mudavadi is going on his own and he's fighting for the Western vote. And if Raila Odinga loses that Western vote, then he loses significantly.
With Charity Ngilu completing the list of the departed ODM brigade, can Kalonzo Musyoka deliver Raila the Eastern region vote?
If you go to Eastern, they would argue, and quite rightly so, that Charity Ngilu has been replaced by Kalonzo Musyoka.
If she brought an Akamba vote, and that it's true that she brought it, and if she has gone out with it, I think that has been more than compensated for, perhaps in an even more fundamental way, with the arrival of Kalonzo Musyoka, who I want to believe has brought a very significant block.
Okay, again, when you look at Kalonzo, first to weigh or to measure Kalonzo's influence, look at his performance in 2007 elections. He didn't get he got much less than 1 million votes, and that in itself tells you. I mean, this is an arrangement that has more than almost about 1.5 million votes within, especially the eastern that encompasses the Ukambani regions. You find that Kalonzo's influence has not been is not as much as possible. And if he couldn't get the whole of Eastern Province votes when he was running as a candidate, it's unlikely that he's going to deliver those votes, even as even possible any number close to what he got as a presidential candidate. And then Ngilu is also a very aggressive campaigner, so that complicates mathematics for Raila. Eastern is not, Kalonzo may not come with much weight in that area.
Raila accused Kalonzo for being a traitor when Kalonzo accepted the position of vice president following the aftermath of the 2007-2008 post-election clashes. Throughout the coalition life, Raila has shown publicly his dissatisfaction with the vice president's existence in the government. However, in 2013, Raila joined hands with Kalonzo Musyoka, naming him his running mate in the newfound court coalition marriage. Is the Raila-Kalonzo marriage a real marriage or a marriage of convenience that may break up after March the 4th?
It's a marriage of convenience. They don't have to have some chemistry. It's just that their interests in as far as the 2013 election was concerned converged. I will not be surprised after the election if their interests diverge again and they are no longer on the same page.
wise people have said that there are no permanent friends and no permanent enemies in politics. It's only a fool who earmarks some people and labels them permanent enemies in politics. The only permanent thing in politics are your interests. And when your interests are going to be best served by working with so-and-so, you will go and work with that person. Future bridges shall be crossed when people get to them. Whether Raila and Kalonzo will hang in there assuming that they win will depend on how the political landscape is going to unfold. Indeed, the fact that even William Ruto and Raila Odinga worked together in 2007 did not indicate that they were of the same political mind. It was another marriage of convenience.
Raila is running for the presidency under the umbrella of the Coalition for Reforms and Democracy CORD. He recently unveiled the CORD manifesto at the Kenyatta International Conference Centre, KICC, giving a 10-point pledge to the country to woo voters to its side. What kind of a political force does CORD represent?
One of the biggest challenges that CORD has right now is in terms of trying to get numbers that, as we've seen, I remember even during the presidential debate, one of the arguments was that there are some communities that have more numbers than others, and that if you put tribal thematic together, you're able to push certain one alliance or ahead of it. But the challenge is that that CORD faces in terms of getting votes. CORD faces is to get votes in regions that feel that possibly, especially regions that have some bitterness towards Raila Odinga over the treatment that the ex-suspect was, because they feel that possibly, and especially in Rift Valley, it's a very significant place. If you are going to win the presidency, you need those votes. Central is also very significant. Western is also very significant. So those are, if they can be able to get serious numbers in those areas, then they may be able to fly. But it will be a very, very hard task.
Raila ran for the presidency in 1997 and 2007, but failed both times. He is giving it another shot in 2013. Could he be third time lucky?
Well, he can be lucky because as it has clearly been demonstrated, this election is a two-horse race between Uhuru Kenyatta and Raila Odinga. So it could be a third time lucky for him. Remember, even Mwai Kibaki contested 3 times. 2 times he lost, and the third time is when he became third time lucky. So he is hoping that he can get the Kibaki luck and win the third time. Remember also, age is not on his side. He's in his last 60s, and even if he were to contest again in 2017, he will be almost nearly mid-70s, and given the generational change of Kenyan politics, he might look too old to run for the presidency. But that does not mean he might not run if he loses this time round. But I just imagine that this is a last realistic chance for Raila Odinga to go for the presidency, because if now his opponents are arguing about a generational change, and they're talking about Kenya needing to have this Jubilee generation taking over leadership, I would imagine that would be the same situation in 2017 and the same situation in 2022. And that will reduce his chances of becoming a president in 2017 and 2022. So realistically, this is Raila's biggest chance to become the president.
Very difficult to tell. This election can go either way. It can be won by Raila, it can be won by Uhuru Kenyatta. What matters is what's going to happen over the next few days, and it could go either way.
Opinion polls by Infotrack and Synovate have in the recent months worked in Raila's favour, placing him as the man to beat in the 2013 polls. Despite the pollsters' ratings, are his chances obvious?
No, nothing is obvious. The margins have been very slim. I believe that these opinion polls have been professionally conducted by people whom we trust whenever they give us opinion polls on other matters. They have not told us that this will be the outcome. They have said if people were to vote today, this is how they would be likely to vote. They have also given us quite a huge chunk of undecided voters. Sometimes it goes as high as 10, 12%. And anything could happen. This election outcome we shall know only after the last ballot paper is counted. We cannot say who is going to win. It's far, far, far too close to call.
Opinion polls, they is a snapshot of political views or a snapshot of what people would want to vote at that point in time. And right now, if the assumption is if they voted at that time when the opinion poll was taken, that would be the result. If they vote a day after that, things change. If they vote a week after that, things change. So it's always all those dynamics that keep shifting depending also on what is happening politically, what the politicians are doing, what propaganda they're spreading, all those dynamics. So right now, okay, he is the man to beat. There's no doubt about it. Raila Odinga will be the man to beat, but it's not, well, as they say, it's not over until it's over. There is no guarantee the fact that he has been ahead. We've also seen in previous, even in other countries, like for instance in the US, for a long time, Romney was, opinion polls were showing Romney was ahead, and then later on they said it's too close to call, but by the time elections went through, it was even before the votes were counted, electoral votes and the popular votes, even before they finished, Obama was way ahead. He had left him by more than almost 100 electoral college votes, which was clear. It wasn't like what the predictions had been. So opinion polls have been known to sometimes to mislead, and sometimes they can also get it right.
I mean, opinion polls do not project. They reflect the country's mood at a particular moment. And as we move closer to the election, then the variables keep changing. People keep changing their minds depending on what happens. Yes, he is a front runner if you going by the opinion polls, but that does not make him the automatic number one in this race. There could be other factors that have not been factored in, or there could be some other issues that are not captured in the opinion polls. Like there are some people who argue that purely on numbers, the Jubilee coalition seems to have the numbers, although the opinion polls show the opposite. So, I mean, Raila Odinga is a front runner, but is an equal front runner with Uhuru Kenyatta in this race.
If elected president, how would a Raila presidency be like?
One of the things that comes out is that Raila is not very different from President Moi. And the reason I say this is because he is a politician who is particularly keen to be seen, when you compare him with, let's say, somebody like Kibaki is he doesn't, once he believes in something, you go do it, whether it's popular or not. He goes with convictions. Raila Odinga doesn't show that. He's a politician who is very keen to please, and we've seen that in a number of places. For instance, I'll give you an example. When I remember he has gone to places and made promises that usually or not, that possibly just to please the immediate audience. And remember, there was a time he was in Mombasa and he was talking about, at the height of MRC, when they talk about Pwani Kenya and all that. And Raila Odinga said, oh, the MRC, we know these are Kenyans, we need to start talking to them, even if they are whatever, we need to. He said as a prime minister, that kind of contradicted the government position. Later on, when I think it was brought to him that you can't start negotiating with the people who are saying that some part of the people who want to secede from a country, first they have to withdraw, or they have to recant that position of seceding before you can start negotiating with them. He changed back and he toned down and he kind of retracted that. But by and large, he has good credentials in terms of somebody who has fought for reforms in this country. Whether you'd now, if you was in charge, you would also continue espousing the same themes is what now Kenyans would have to wait and see.
First, I think it's going to be a one-term presidency. But whoever takes over Raila Odinga is going to be transitional. He said he's a bridge between this generation and future generations. If he becomes the president, he's going to be the bridge that we shall use to cross to 2017 and beyond.
What are Raila's perceived weaknesses that would work against him in the 2013 race to succeed Kibaki?
The perception out there is that he's not able to keep a team together. After election, his team crumbled, and now he has had to build a team together, assemble a whole new team, especially now with Kalonzo Musyoka and Moses Wetangula. So that's it. In terms of perception, it might look like that his main weakness, and that might be his undoing if people believe this perception that he lost some ground in so many areas. And of course also, he has to mobilize, and he has to be seen to be mobilizing beyond now what is being called the Luo Nyanza and Ukambani vote, and go to other regions. He's doing that, but we are not so sure that he's winning this in terms of getting the numbers.
One of the biggest weaknesses is that one of wanting to please the immediate crowd. You've seen, like even during the elections, one time there was a time it was perceived to have sent him overtures that people in Kibera and some places should not pay rent. I mean, there's some positions he takes that are not necessarily in the national interest. And then also the other perceived weakness is the people around him. There are some characters, without going into names, there are some people around him who are perceived to have their hands in too many deals in terms of whether it's government deals and other too. So there are a number of corrupt agents around him.
You don't carry unnecessary cargo alone. One of Raila's greatest weaknesses is that he believes he must carry along with him cargo from the Jaramogi Oginga Odinga family, that he must travel with Uburu Odinga, that he must travel with his sister Ruth Odinga, that he must travel with the Jakoyo Midio. That is cargo. When you are a leader like that and this cargo is burdensome, leave them. You are not there to go with the tribe and with the family. There are other people you can work with and travel with into the future. I've seen sometimes we send each other messages at the end of the year. We say, be like a bird, travel light. And the reason birds fly is that they travel light. So if you're carrying all these Akina Midio and Oburu and who, and they are dragging you down, see what they did to him in Luo Nyanza. There's likely to be voter apathy because of that cargo.
What are his strong points that would work to his advantage?
Well, his strength is that he's a relentless campaigner. We've always known Raila Odinga to be a very relentless campaigner. He's always on the campaign trail. And I think the other thing that you have to acknowledge is that Raila Odinga has built a brand, a political brand, that now looks electable. If those who are following Kenyan politics in 1997 know that Raila Odinga was this radical, and everybody was saying, well, this guy, he was a Martin Shikuku type of politician, a defender of the people's right, but everybody was saying, no, we cannot trust this man with political power because he's just too radical. Then over the years, he's built a political brand that has sort of like smoothened the rough edges, and he looks like a presidential material at this particular moment.
He's a very, very, very serious campaigner. That one is not somebody who can take lightly. He's very aggressive, he's full of energy, and he doesn't, once he sets his goals, he goes for it, and he hardly lets anything get him off the way. And then also, of course, we have to look at the fact that he has, among the candidates, he has the longest political CV in terms of what you could see he has done for the country in terms of fighting for reforms and the personal sacrifices that he has made.
Raila will be best remembered in the Grand Coalition government for being so instrumental in the delivery of the new constitution to the Republic of Kenya.
Whereas the people of Kenya, in exercise of their sovereign right to replace the Constitution, ratified the proposed new Constitution of Kenya through a referendum held on the 4th August 2010.
His supporters call him Agwambo. Raila is best known in the political circles as the most humorous politician who knows how to play to the tune of his supporters. He has illuminated Kenya's political arena with his versatility on stage as a master of political satire that he has successfully used to woo the masses.
Sasa tutacheza hapa Ikolomani. Sawa? Tutacheza hapa Ikolomani. Sawa? Sasa mmeona timu imekuja, ngambo ile tumeona Arsenal iko pande ile. Na Alwali ametoka na ile timu pande ile. Sasa hiyo kwa kiwanja. Mpira umeanza. Alwali amechukua mpira. Amempatia Ujini wa Malwa. Anaenda na mpira ampatia Soita Shitanda. Tanda na mpira. Tanda anaenda na mpira. Ana mpira Shitanda. Ampatia Wafoli wa Koli. Koli anaenda na mpira. Amerudishia Halwali. Halwali na mpira. Halwali na mpira. Oh, ameona ng'ombe pande ile ametoka. Mheshimiwa Alwali alikuwa na mpira lakini ng'ombe nyingine likimbia pande ile. Ameona amewacha mpira sasa amepata ng'ombe nje.
Odinga is married to Ida Odinga. They live in Karen, Nairobi, but have a second home at Opoda Farm, Bondo District. They have 4 children, 2 sons and 2 daughters, Fidel, Rosemary, Raila Jr. and Winnie. Fidel is named after Fidel Castro and Winnie after Winnie Mandela. One of the great quotes on leadership by Ralph Emerson states, "Do not follow where the path may lead. Go instead where there is no path and leave a trail." Can Raila penetrate the murky political waters and be third time lucky? The Road to Statehouse analysts' interviews were shot at Classic Moldings. Classic Moldings, bringing spirit and soul to interiors across Africa.